Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Ice the Kicker. Very special Christmas episode, and we have come through with the sweaters. You got a Dolphins sweater, and I have a
Yes,
more
sir.
traditional Christmas sweater. This actually has red solo cups on the sleeve. I got it for a college party back in the old college days, and I don't think I've worn it since. And then you texted me, "Do you have your sweater?" And I was like, "Oh, I have one." So
That we need it.
I got it. I got it out of the deep part of my closet. So we did
I
it.
feel that.
We did it. Week 15 in the NFL is done. We have a new leader at the top of the NFL draft, and that is the Jacksonville Jaguars. And that is because the New York Jets beat the LA Rams by a score of 23-20, I believe it was, if I'm not
Uh,
mistaken.
it was. Where is it? We have 23 to 20.
23-20. So as we speak right now, the Jaguars are on the clock, and the Jaguars are, projected to take Clemson quarterback Trevor Lawrence. People say that Trevor Lawrence is the best prospect to come out of the NFL draft since Andrew Luck. Obviously, Andrew Luck was a good NFL quarterback. Injuries kind of shortened his career, but he was a tremendous quarterback at Stanford, and people are comparing Trevor Lawrence to that kind of talent, that kind of transcendent, organizational changing guy. And that's the guy that the Jets haven't had since Joe Namath back 50 years ago, before any of us were born. So the whole talk around New York and New Jersey the last few days has been, of course, the Jets do this. Of course, the Jets, fuck this up. And this is just
Hmm.
those same old Jets can't even lose right. When a franchise that's just the franchise that is known for losing, when they actually need to lose, they win. That's kind of how the Jets are. So now it's a much more interesting conversation to have about this Jets future because we know Gase is going to be gone. I don't think anything's saving his job at this moment. But what we thought was going to happen was that Sam Darnold was going to lose his job too because they were going to trade Trevor Lawrence and they were going to trade Darnold or just release him and have him go his own way. Now it's a little bit different. Let's say hypothetically that the results stay the same and the Jaguars get the first overall pick and the Jets are at 2 and they have Justin Fields sitting there at 2 from Ohio State. Is he that much of an upgrade over Sam Darnold? Sam Darnold obviously has struggled in his third year as the Jets quarterback. His first 2 years, he showed a lot of promise, a lot of potential, and then all of his growth has been stunted this year for a myriad of reasons. His coach sucks. He has no
Hmm.
weapons. His organization didn't do anything to help him in terms of getting weapons. They let Robbie Anderson walk. Obviously, on the defensive side, they let Jamal Adams leave. So they didn't put a roster around him that would help him be successful. But, he hasn't helped himself. So the question going around now is what do you do if you're the Jets if you're at 2? Do you go with Justin Fields and just change up everything, coach and quarterback, or do you just change the coach and rally behind Sam Darnold and use that number 2 pick to get a lineman, the best receiver out there, defensive help? What's the best avenue for the Jets to take if they don't leapfrog the Jaguars in the next 2 weeks?
Well, I'll start off first by trying to go through and tackle every avenue that is available. But first off, I have to say that the Jets fandom and the Jets fan base is in total disarray right now. I mean, you talk to anybody and they don't know what to do. Now all of a sudden, Darnold's the guy. Now Fields stinks. All right, other people say, "Oh, still got to go with Fields," and then it's all right. Now we got to keep going with Darnold. He just needs some weapons, and it is all over the place. And obviously, as a Dolphin fan, I love to see that. But it's crazy how much impact one game has. And I remember when the game was going on, I texted some of our friends and I was like, these next 6 minutes and 35 seconds, because I'm pretty sure that's when the Jets took the lead again, could dictate the future for the next 5, maybe even 10 years. And I know that might sound crazy, but honestly, it's the truth. I mean, the quarterback, like we keep saying, is the most important position on the field. And you had a chance basically to where if you lost and lost out, you would have Trevor Lawrence. And again, not that he's a sure thing, but he's one of the most highly sought after prospects and quarterbacks since Andrew Luck. And I think he's even going to be better than what Andrew Luck is. I think coming out of college, he's even better than what Andrew Luck is. So first off, it's just crazy to see that the whole fan base is in disarray. No one really knows what to do. Obviously, we're going to trust Joe Douglas that he does have a plan, because you can't really have banked on just one guy to be your answer in Trevor Lawrence. I mean, that's a lot of faith to put, or pretty much a lot of, or not a lot of, the opposite of faith, whatever that is, in basically Adam Gase to give you an 0-16 season. So before we get into the quarterback situation, I want to first kind of address Adam Gase in that situation. So realistically, it pretty much was kind of understood that you had him going the whole season just because you didn't want to bring in another guy and have to go through all that. But you said that, Adam Gase is gone. And I feel like now they got to win. Like, what was the purpose of keeping Gase this whole year, if not to maybe keep him next year? I mean, clearly the team has been very, very bad. I mean, statistically, they're pretty bad in every category: offense, defense, special teams, whatever it is. So right off the bat, those were obviously grounds to fire Gase. I mean, you look at Darnold too, in the games he has played when he came back from injury, he hasn't really taken another leap forward, and Gase has admitted that he's basically failed him in some way. So there's another strike right there. I mean, he had issues with Jamal Adams. He has issues with other players. He had obviously the Raiders game, which was a complete blunder on Greg Williams, but he's a head coach. He could step in as well. And he said, hey, I should have stepped in. So he's striking out all over the place, yet now he still has a job. And now we got to win, and a big win. It wasn't against some slap team. It was against the NFC West favorites right now. I'm pretty sure the Rams. So I really don't know if Gase getting fired is as much of a lock anymore as we thought, because I mean, you just look at it like it seemed like Douglas was holding on to Gase to basically ensure this 0-16 season. It seemed like he was a step ahead of everybody. But now, all right, you see they got one win and they almost had two, but they should have had the one against the Raiders too. So it's like, if you didn't fire him in the middle of the season, why fire him now at that point? And that's kind of how I look at it. What's your opinion on that before we get into the quarterback situation?
I thought they were keeping him around because they thought if they got rid of him, they would have probably won a game because someone else would have been more competent, calling plays than Adam Gase was. But now that they've won a game against the Rams, now there's really nothing to gain from having him, because it's not like you're keeping him to lose, because he's proven that, the team can win with him because they did win a game. Yeah. I don't see how his job can be saved at all. I mean, you look down the numbers. They're obviously their records, the worst or tied for the worst in the league. Their offensive numbers go down the order. They're bottom half, probably the worst or the second to worst in every important offensive category. This is a guy that's supposed to be a quarterback guru, an offensive guru, and he's horrible, and the team's horrible, and the team can't move the ball, other than Sunday, obviously. But I just don't think that there's a reason to keep him at this point. And I also don't think right now there's any reason to let him go with just 2 games left. I don't see how having an interim head coach for 2 games is going to do any good or do any harm. So why not just run with it? Because the guy who's going to replace for the interim in week 16 and 17 is not going to be the guy in September of 2021 in week 1. So at this point, if they didn't fire him in week 8 or 9, then there's no point to fire him now. Maybe since he's such a lame duck that maybe after week 16 going into week 17, they just hand him his papers and say, get out. Because that's what the Giants did with McAdoo back like 3 years ago. But I don't know. I don't know what the loyalty is for Douglas to Gase, because remember, it was McCagnon and then there was a power struggle, and Gase won the power struggle because he wanted Douglas. So now he brings in Douglas. So that would be kind of a backstabbing move for Douglas now to fire Gase mid-season, not even a year and a half after that. It's just really weird how they do things. Like, the Jets do everything wrong. They draft wrong. They handle their players wrong. They develop their quarterbacks wrong. They win wrong, like what we just saw. Just everything they do sucks. Yeah. So what's the point of firing Gase at this point is my question. I don't really see one this late in the game. if they wanted to fire him after like week 6 or week 7, I could have got down with that because, there's still a season with
Mm-hmm.
8-9 games left, but now with 2, like what's the point? I feel
The only possible answer I could see to firing him in the next couple weeks is to maybe they want to just give, if there's anybody with even a fraction of a percent of a possibility of being the Jets' next head coach that's already on the staff right now, I think that would be means to fire Gase for the next 2 weeks.
But what
and
are you
you
going to
give,
prove in 2 games?
I mean, I guess I just think it's better than no games, I guess you could
Yeah.
say. Like if they have a candidate, a future head coaching candidate in mind that's already on the staff, and obviously Gase is blocking them, then just give them the same reason you see sometimes, like, all right, you're already out of the playoffs already, or maybe now let's throw in the rookie, kind of similar situation like that, and just see what he does, because you already know what you're getting with Gase. So that's the only reason I could think to fire Gase right now. And that's what I mean. It's just it would make perfect sense. It seems like to everybody, but maybe besides Joe Douglas, that to fire Gase either right now, or if not right now, then in the offseason. But it's such a weird thing, because it's like, how is he surviving right now? I mean, honestly, you could say the same for Doug Marrone in Jacksonville as well. He basically got promised his 2021 back too.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, like, Gase's staff that's his staff. So
Mm-hmm.
not only is he getting fired at the end of the year, but
Clean
they're
the
all
house.
gone.
Yeah.
And they're going to hire someone, and he's going to bring in his own guy. So every single coach is gone. If they knew what they were doing and they're going to do the right thing, every coach with Gase is also going to be gone. It doesn't matter if they did their jobs right or not. It's just that Gase's staff is his staff, and whoever they bring in will bring, their own staff. So if you fire Gase, more than anything else, it's really just a show to appease the fan base.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't really need to do that in this kind of year, because they're not in the stands. They're
Mm-hmm.
not screaming at you. Nobody's going out to dinner. Nobody's going to yell at, Douglas at dinner to, fire Gase. So they kind of caught a break this season, being as bad as they did. They were with, no fans and stuff like that. But I just feel like if they were going to fire Gase, that should have been weeks ago. But I think they kept Gase, thinking, okay, having Gase here as the head coach gives us the best possible chance to lose. And, it didn't work out. So who's to say if Gase wasn't the coach against the Raiders game, they would have won the Raiders game. So they did get the losses they needed out of Gase. It's just that, at the last second, they got to win. And, look, in second guessing and using hindsight, they probably should have fired him like week 8. But they took this gamble to like tank, I guess, and they lost.
Yeah. So I'll segue into now, where do you go from here? And that's the biggest question that Jets fans and just players and then the front office need to realize. What do we do from here? And you mentioned how they're going to bring in a new coach. So now there's such a big dilemma with the new coach coming in, because now that Jets job is not as glorious or as prestigious as it was a week ago, or as it was less than 24 hours ago, or because now you look at that job and you were basically handed Trevor Lawrence on a silver platter. You were handed multiple first-round picks in the next 2 years, and then you were handed cap space, and you had a team that was pretty much ready to be rebuilt. And then with that rookie quarterback comes security for the coach. Usually the coach isn't going to be fired within 2 years if he has a rookie quarterback. Now you have not Trevor Lawrence, and we'll get into Justin Fields in a little bit, but now you have a situation where you don't really know what to do with Darnold now, because a lot of people are saying that they don't really see a difference in Trevor Lawrence. I mean, they don't see a difference between Justin Fields, or even say Trey Lance or Zach Wilson, the other quarterbacks, and Sam Darnold. So now you have an issue where a coach might say, hey, that's not what I want to go with. And now you might have Douglas say, all right, like I want to maybe Douglas says, I want to keep Gase, but Gase is like, oh, I want to draft Fields. Or maybe Douglas finds a coach that he really likes, but the coach wants to keep Darnold. And then you see what I mean? How everything can now go against each other. Now Douglas is going to need to probably I would assume, settle on a coach who's going to do what he wants. So, and that could be keep Darnold. So that's where I think if Darnold stays, you could see Gase stay as well, because we tend to see that quarterbacks and head coaches get married a little bit together. But it's such a huge issue right now, because a new coach is going to come in there, and obviously the first thing they're going to get asked, or Douglas is going to ask them, is going to be, what are you going to do or what are you going to do basically with Darnold? And I know Douglas is still going to make his picks, but I mean, if there's one pick that the head coach is going to make, it's going to be his quarterback for the next 4 to 5 and hopefully years, because that's his job security right there. So I know GMs obviously should and they have the right to make the picks. If there's one pick that they're going to give up to a coach, it's going to be that quarterback, and it's probably going to be that quarterback with the second overall pick if they go down that route.
Yeah, plan A was definitely the Trevor Lawrence, because that's an easy sell to everybody. Everybody interviewing for the Jets job is going to say the exact same thing in terms of what their plan would be for the Jets. They would say, we're going to draft Lawrence, we're going to move Darnold, and we're going to use the cap space to build around Trevor Lawrence. Now it's not so simple, because now that number 2 pick is different. What do you do with that number 2 pick? As you said, do we do Fields? And if we do Fields, if we do draft Fields, I should say, if we do draft Fields, do we so quickly get rid of Darnold, or do we keep Darnold and have them battle it out and see who wins? Or do you not take a quarterback at all and take, receiver or lineman or a tight end or anything that the Jets need? And they need a lot of things to be a competitive team. So this is something that each head coach candidate is going to have a different answer for. And Joe Douglas is going to have to weigh those suggestions and ideas that each candidate is going to have and make a decision that's best aligned with what he feels is true. That's why it was so easy just to lose out and get Trevor Lawrence, because that's something everybody agrees with. And as you were saying with Justin Fields in the NFL draft this year, it's not like previous drafts where, it was Baker and Darnold and Allen, and they were all kind of in the same conglomerate of talent. It's Trevor Lawrence. There's a sizable gap in talent, and then it's Justin Fields. Justin Fields is a good quarterback, but he's not on the same level, I don't know if you agree or disagree, than what Trevor Lawrence is, because people are talking up Trevor Lawrence like he's a franchise savior, like a Peyton Manning, or, in other sports, a LeBron James, or in other sports, a Sidney Crosby type of, first overall pick. This is going to make the franchise go from a laughingstock to a perennial winner. And people aren't saying that about Justin Fields, at least from where I've read. So it completely changes everything. Also, Justin Fields didn't look fantastic in the Big Ten championship game. I know Ohio State has played like only 6 games, but it is what it is. So now there's so many different things that makes Joe Douglas so much more important to the Jets, because he needs to decide on the coach, and he needs to decide on the quarterback, and he needs to decide on the cap space, and it's just a whole bunch of things now that made it more complicated, because the Jets had to beat the Rams. And the one thing about the Jets throughout our lives, paying attention to football, and even before that, when we were not even born, and through the 70s, 80s, 90s, the Jets are, not known for making the right decisions when they're complicated. So, who's to say that the second overall pick they're gonna screw up?
Yeah.
It makes it so much. The margin for error is so much smaller now that they don't have the Lawrence safety net.
Yeah, again, and it's a great point. And then just it's funny when you compare the two. And first off, I think that the expectation for Lawrence is already borderline unfair. Dare I say, anything in this world is unfair to a kid who's going to be 21 years old signing a $36 million contract in a few months. But it's flirting with that. And I also think that the criticism to an extent is unfair to Fields. Yes, Fields is not Trevor Lawrence, but the way I kind of see it is, say Trevor Lawrence wasn't in this draft class, I feel like Fields would still be the first overall pick. Like it's one of those kind of situations where I feel like everybody below Trevor Lawrence is kind of getting shit on a little bit. Again, it could be warranted. Like I haven't watched enough film of Fields. I think this game in the college football playoff is going to be on an absolute under an absolute microscope from Jets fans, and I think just from around the NFL, because like you said, we haven't really watched a lot of Justin Fields. I mean, Last year, you saw a little bit when they lost to Clemson in the college football playoff, but everybody's eyes were on Tua until he got hurt, and they were glued to Burrow, and you're obviously glued to Trevor Lawrence as well. So now everybody's going to really get a good look at Fields, but the good look is only going to be one game, and I think people are going to have to form their opinions that way. So it's going to be interesting to see. I still think that Fields is still definitely good enough. I mean, he's still a first-round pick. I mean, a bunch of analysts, again, on ESPN, again, I know they're not always right, we're saying that there's probably going to be 4, if not 5 quarterbacks in the first round. And the Jets having 2 first-round picks, like you have a little more kind of wiggle room to take Fields at 2. Because, it's such a weird thing because I feel like fans of the Jets don't want to take Fields at 2 because they feel like they're missing out on somebody else. Well, to that little compensation to make up for that missed out prospect, whatever you could kind of say, is what you have with the Seahawks pick in that first rounder. And then you have the Seahawks first rounder next year too. So you have a little more room to not make a mistake per se, but to take a little more of a calculated risk, I guess you could say, on a guy. And again, I think all draft picks are risks anyway.
Mhm.
But like a guy like Fields, like, again, if you pick him at 2, like what does it matter? Like at the end of the day, there's good picks and there's bad picks. When we go down the line, you think of all these different players and all these great and all these bad players. You're good or you're bad. It's really rare for us to kind of go back. Besides the Brady's, obviously, we're like, oh, well, he was a 6th, 7th rounder. It's like, hey, is this guy good or is he bad now? Like, it doesn't, like, who gives a shit when he was drafted? That's kind of how I am looking at it that way.
I'm glad you brought up Brady because there's something I also listened to on the radio today, and the person that said it made a good point. Good franchises will make it work no matter where they are selecting in the drafts. Like, not
100%.
every Hall of Fame quarterback, franchise-saving quarterback, is the first overall pick. Brady, Dak, Herbert for
Russell.
the Chargers last draft. The list
Russell
goes on
Wilson.
and on about guys who
Yeah.
weren't Russell Wilson. Perfect example of a Seahawks franchise that knows what they're doing, and they did their homework, and they found a gem in the 5th round or 4th round, whatever it was, with Russell Wilson, and they got a future Hall of Fame quarterback later in the draft. To say that the Jets needed Trevor Lawrence to save their franchise, I don't think that's fair. It would have made it a whole lot easier for them to save their future of the franchise if they got Trevor Lawrence, because everyone's projecting that he's going to be this great quarterback, and he might not be. He might bust. There's always that possibility.
Always,
but you are going to be a competent franchise, and if Joe Douglas is going to make the Jets a competent organization, then you need to play with the hand that you're dealt. And if you're the 2nd overall pick, there's a bunch of teams that are rebuilding that would like that 2nd overall pick.
Yeah.
The most important question for the Jets is going to be those 2. First of all, who's the coach going to be? There's so many different avenues you can take if you're the Jets. You can go coordinator and just, upgrade a coordinator to head coach from around the league. You could pick a head coach that's currently not coaching. You could, dip into the college field. There's so many different ways you can do your head coach, and it's imperative that the Jets' next hire is a guy, right? He's going to be a head coach. No more Todd Bowles, no more Adam Gase. Rex Ryan was a fun story, but no more Rex Ryan. They need like that slam dunk head coach that's going to bring relevancy back to the organization. The Patriots have it. It seems like the Dolphins have it now. The Giants seem to have found a head coach that's like a no nonsense. We're gonna do the things the right way, and we're gonna respect the process kind of head coach. That's what they need first of all. Second of all, they need to decide on Sam Darnold. And what you said about Justin Fields being the first overall pick if Lawrence wasn't in this draft, I agree to a certain extent. I agree to the certain extent if the Jaguars had the first overall pick. They would have taken a quarterback no matter who it was, Lawrence or Fields, first overall. The Jets, it's different because they have this wild card in Sam Darnold, who's only 23 years old. So he's not, 26, 27, where you can pull the plug and just restart. This kid has a lot of football left in front of him if he gets catered and coddled, I guess, correctly by whoever's the management is. You have to decide if he's worth saving. what we've seen this year would dictate that he's not, because even though he doesn't have wide receivers, Mims has been out a lot. Other than that, they have nobody. They didn't bring back Robbie Anderson. They have no weapons. He also didn't help himself. He didn't make good decisions. He threw the ball away a lot, threw a lot of interceptions. So you have to decide, is Fields a definitive upgrade over Darnold? I don't think he is. I think he could be an upgrade over Darnold, but I don't think he's a Trevor Lawrence kind of upgrade. So with that kind of ideology, then instead you could build around Darnold. You can use the second and whatever other pick they have in the first round, and they have 2 seconds, and they have all this cap space. There's an opportunity to still win with Sam Darnold, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I'll try to tackle. You said a lot of good things. I'm going to try to dissect here and there. The first question I have for you is, what's more important for the Jets going into 2021? Is it who the starting quarterback is for the first opening day of 2021, or is it who the coach is?
It's the coach. It all has to start with the coach. Because if you have a quarterback and you have a shitty head coach, then what's the point?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, definitely. I would agree there too. So the way I kind of look at the Jets situation and with Darnold, I kind of broke it into 3 options, and all of them have tremendous effects, whether it be positive or negative, how they work out. So the first option is, and this is without taking the coach into consideration, is just the quarterback situation. So you have option 1 is where you could keep Darnold, and then you build through the draft, and then you build through free agency. So obviously every year you have X amount of draft picks and they have a surplus, which is nice. So you can keep using those to build your team, and building your team through the draft is what would happen no matter who the quarterback is. So that's first off. People act like, oh, if you draft Fields, like you can't get this guy, then you can't get, it's 1 pick. You have, like I said, you have 2 first rounders. You go get another good guy in the first round, or then, hey, maybe do what other great GMs do and you find some diamonds in the rough in the 3 through 7. So, but with keeping Darnold, and obviously he has 2 years left on his rookie deal if they pick up his 5th-year option, you're going to be saying, hey, we're going to win now. Because, again, we've talked about a lot that the time to win is when the quarterback is on his rookie contract. And Darnold is going to be going into year 4, and you have to eventually start getting aggressive in free agency. And that is what scares me a little bit with the first option, because what's going to end up happening is if they say, hey, Darnold's the guy, we're going to build around him with the draft picks, then you're going to get pretty aggressive in free agency. So what I mean by that is you're going to sign a lot of you're probably going to good amount of big splash free agents for more money than you're probably happy to spend, but it is what it is because you need these guys and the market determines the price. So it is what it is. And you're going to sign deals that are going to be anywhere from like 2 to 4 years, because that's going to be basically you're setting your window based around your quarterback to say, hey, we're going to win now. So the issue with that is now you're putting everything on Sam Darnold, because the worst thing you could have, I feel like, is, all right, you go to battle, you sign all these guys to 2-3 year deals, and then in next year, say Sam Darnold still kind of stinks. And then it's like, all right, well, odds are you're probably not going to have as good of a draft pick as they have this year to get, say, a top sought out prospect. And then what ends up happening is then Sam Darnold plays his 5th-year option. Basically, if Sam Darnold doesn't prove he's the guy by next year, and you have to learn that he's not the guy by his 5th-year option, now you just wasted not only his rookie deal and potentially this number 2 overall pick, now you're wasting every free agent you just spent money on. You get what I mean there? Because now you're wasting their time, because when they come in, they want to win too. And then you obviously could factor in, all right, who wants to go to the Jets? Say, I know obviously money talks the loudest, but certain guys are going to places where, hey, if we want to win, they're not going to maybe go there if it's a rookie quarterback right away. So that's kind of option 1. What are your thoughts on that before I dive into option 2?
I like option A because, obviously you're playing to win, and you're giving Darnold that chance. Option A is only works if you get a head coach that people respect. As you said, free agents, money is going to talk the loudest, but what also is going to talk is the reputation of who's in charge. And right now, with Chris Johnson and Adam Gase, that's not the case. Nobody really respects what's going on. But if you get a great head coach, a head coach that players respect, either on the NFL professional level or at college, that's going to entice. And obviously, you draft well, like people like the draft moves you make. That's going to entice major free agents to want to come to the Jets. So I don't think it's a complete teardown with the Jets because, all this cap space, you get three or four like huge guys on your roster. That flips the script in the NFL really quickly. Like in NFL, it's probably the easiest to flip the switch in terms of going from bad to good. We see it all the time. 3-13 next year, they're 10-6. Like it happens a lot. So option A is indicative on, getting a head coach that free agents are going to want to play for.
So I definitely agree there. And obviously that it puts a lot of pressure on it. There's no room for, it's a new system. Like, no, like that's done. Like you're going to battle and you're going to win and you're going to get super aggressive in free agency. So option 2 is you draft Fields. You're obviously using up all your draft picks, if not maybe even trading back and then accumulating more picks and just bringing in a shit ton of rookies. What would end up happening is you're probably not going to get anyone big in free agency, maybe like one splash, nothing too crazy. And if it is a big splash, it's probably going to be for a 4 or 5 year deal because you're allowing for that buffer period of that first year when you have either Fields or any other rookie quarterback. If the head coach even decides to play him, they might kind of have that bridge quarterback like we see with Fitzpatrick. So with that option, and this is where you kind of can tackle the argument of people saying, all right, Fields is a lateral move to Darnold. So with Darnold, you kind of already know what you have, and this will lead me into option 3. So with Darnold, you kind of already know what you have to an extent. He shows signs of being great, and then he shows signs of being terrible. And he's up and he's down, and he's up and he's down. So if I'm a new head coach coming in, I'm going to go with that quote unquote lateral move in Fields only because now I have basically 4 to 5 years of a new lottery ticket where it almost seems like Darnold is that scratch off that you're basically kind of trying to peek behind the little remnants and you already see what the results are. Whereas Fields might be that same $2 scratch off lottery ticket, but I haven't started yet. So you don't really know what you're getting with Field, and in a sense that could be a good thing, if you get what I mean there.
Yeah, but here my problem with that is it also can be a bad thing. Like option 2 sounds a lot like you're just rebuilding again. How many times are you going to ask the fan base to give us 4 years before you see any results? Like that's a tough thing to continuously ask your fan base. And my problem with Fields over Darnold is that, it's not a guarantee that Fields is better than Darnold. I'm
100%.
It's not a guarantee that Lawrence would be because Lawrence can obviously, bust or have injury problems when he gets to the NFL, knock on wood. But I'm much more confident in Lawrence being an upgrade than Fields being an upgrade over Darnold. And that's why it's a hard sell to the Jets fans to say, we're going to draft a comparable quarterback to the one that we already have. Oh, by the way, this option is going to take another 3 years to come into fruition. I think that's a tough ask.
Yeah, I get what you mean. I mean, you did reference yourself, though, before how it can get turned around quickly. I mean, obviously, you see with obviously the Dolphins and with Tua a little bit. I mean, the Browns turned around after a little buffer period in Baker's sophomore year. I mean, you're seeing with her, like if Herbert had just the slightest bit of a competent head coach, I think they could even be a playoff team too. So I don't think it would be as drastic as people may think. But you have to also, like to your point, you have to reserve the fact that hey, it may take some time, and you're probably not going to win in that first year. But it's such a like a shitty situation. And again, the reason that it's almost so near and dear to me, besides just that it's the AFC East, and besides the fact that I do hate the Jets, is that it is eerily similar to the Dolphins with Tannehill. It's the same thing, and it's ironic that it's with Gase as well. Is that you had a guy in Ryan Tannehill who his whole rookie deal was he He was hot. He was cold. The arguments were, let's get him some new weapons. All right, let's get him a new line. Let's get him a run game. Let's get him a new head coach. And then what ended up happening is we gave him his second deal, and we paid him for the guy that we never really saw. We paid him for who we hoped he would be, not who we saw he could be, and then who we projected him to be. We were just hoping that he was going to be this guy, and he ended up getting like around $22 million a year, which at the time was in like top 5 of the NFL, and he was not a top 5 NFL quarterback. Obviously, you're seeing him having success now, but that's kind of what I see with the Jets right now, is that they're going to almost bait themselves into giving Darnold another deal. And obviously, if Darnold sees his way to the Jets on a deal past his rookie contract, it's going to be anywhere from 20 plus million, just because, I mean, Kirk Cousins is making $33 million. Obviously, Mahomes is making 45, 50. I would
It's
easily
just the going
assume,
rate for a quarterback.
Exactly
no matter what
my point.
Yeah.
So obviously Darnold, even if he's stays the same, which is very average, he's going to be making upwards of $20 million. So that's kind of where I see it as, all right, we're just going to make the financial decision to take Field, and you're paying him now $8 million for the next 4 to 5 years. So
let's say though the Jets, get a good coach. Let's say they hit on everything, right? They get a good coach. They spend their money wisely. They draft well. All their draft picks, are boom. They all work out. And the second overall pick, they take Fields, right? And Fields inherits all of this, good
Wealth.
things that the Jets did this offseason: the coach, the cap space, the other draft picks, whatever other changes they make to the roster, right? And let's say they go up with Fields to 8 wins, and they're 8-8, which, going from 1-15 to 8-8 is a seismic leap, in my opinion. I would take that if I'm a Jets fan.
I think so too.
Now, this was my question in terms of, Darnold over Fields. Did they go from 1-15 to 8-8 because Justin Fields was the quarterback and not Sam Darnold? Or was it because they did everything around Justin Fields well, and if they would have just kept Sam Darnold or just plugged him in instead of Fields, it would have been the same thing? So instead, if you just kept Darnold, you would have had that extra, pick in the second overall slot to even further pad the development that you've had with your franchise. I don't know if I'm wording it correctly.
No, 100%.
So, it is like I'll phrase it this way. In baseball, there's the stat we all know. It's called wins above replacement. Is the wins above replacement, if everything on the roster is equal, is the win above replacement for Fields over Darnold exceptionally better, where it's worth taking the quarterback second overall?
Exceptionally better, I'm going to say no. However,
how many wins better should Fields be over Darnold for you to be comfortable taking Fields second overall and giving up on Darnold, who's 23 years old and has had a run of bad luck in terms of who his head coach has been and what his roster around him looks like?
I don't know if I can necessarily put a number on it, and the reason I can't, and I know I'm probably copping out a little bit, but people want to look at a team's success, and it's only the quarterback, and people are like, oh, well, he's the system guy. And we've talked about it a little bit, but I wanted to readdress it. There is one quarterback in the league, only one, who is in a shitty system or shitty circumstance and thrives, and that's Deshaun Watson. Every other quarterback, basically in the history of football, who is considered successful or had success on a team, had a quote unquote good system. So anybody like who wants to say, oh, well, the system this and the system that, he's a system guy, everybody needs a system. It's just a fact. Yeah. So with that being said, for Darnold to be successful, he needs a system. For Fields to be successful, he needs a system. What you have to dive into is how much can the quarterback and his own skill offset the shortcomings of the rest of your team. So that, to me, that's where I see the most value in quarterbacks specifically, because you look at Rodgers, I would say he uplifts the rest of his team more than any quarterback in football. And I'd honestly argue that Deshaun Watson does this potentially better than Mahomes. If you get what I'm saying, like when you really
Yeah,
break it down.
Mahomes' roster around him is just ridiculously stupid.
And he himself is ridiculously stupid in his skill. It's an absolute perfect storm. So I don't want to diss Mahomes totally, but when you look at, like I said, Watson, and then I said Rodgers too, those two players make everybody else around them better. And I think that's what a guy like Trevor Lawrence has the ability to do. And that's not saying that you can just throw him out there with a bunch of high schoolers and to block for him. It's impossible. It won't be successful. Now, your question about kind of what is enough of a difference to make the move, the way I'm kind of thinking in my head right now, even if it was just a lateral move, I think I would still go to the new guy just because it gives you financially 4 to 5 more years. I think it just makes sense. If I could put it this way, would you rather pay $8 million for the same kind of wins above replacement, or pay 20 plus? I mean, I think that's a simple answer.
I think that's a fair question. You take the 8.
That's my point exactly. And I think a head coach as well is going to do the same thing, just because they're going to have more job security, but that's kind of separate. But that's kind of how I look at it. And and there's no statistics behind what I'm about to say next, but it's just the Jets, I feel like, need something new. And it's the same way I felt with Tannehill and the Dolphins. We needed something new. He needed something new.
Yeah.
Because again, that once you have to pay that quarterback, it changes basically the life cycle of your team. Because you look at teams like, say, the Texans right now, who are in, or even not even Texans, look at the Eagles right now, who are in cap hell, and their whole team is in disarray because they're paying a quarterback and their team is not ready to win. So that is the biggest fear I think a Jets fan should have. And that obviously rides on Darnold playing, and then obviously if he stays mediocre, but they continue to go with him.
Yeah, it's definitely a tough, decision that this team's going to have to make, because, as you said, I guess Fields gives the Jets organization more time to build a winner, but at the same time, as I said previously, it's hard to ask your fans to
Agreed.
deal with another development. And in their track record with quarterbacks for the last 50 years has been that every single quarterback they try to develop has failed. Darnold is not looking good right now, if we just say it as it is, right?
Yeah.
Smith didn't work out. Christian Hackenberg never played a game. Mark Sanchez didn't work out. Pennington had a few good years, didn't work out. Sims didn't work out. Other than Namath, it didn't even the guys they brought in.
Mettenberger.
Boomer Esiason. Nothing's ever worked out for the Jets.
Tebow a little bit.
So why, if I'm a Jets fan, Tebow, yeah, ugh, that was a disaster. If I'm a Jets fan and the organization, is trying to tell me we're gonna take Fields and we're gonna develop him with X head coach, and we're gonna bring this around, I'm like, why should I trust you at this point?
Yeah, no, I mean that
you're just plugging in another guy that's gonna fail. That's why this is so devastating for the Jets, because Lawrence was supposed to be that guy that's not going to fail. And I'm not saying that Fields will fail in the NFL, and I'm not saying whoever they pick is going to end up failing in the NFL. It's just that
statistically speaking, they may.
Statistically speaking, it fails. Yeah. So at this point, I have a 23-year-old kid already. Let's just ride it out with him.
So this is what leads me to option 3, and I think this might be my favorite option of them all, and it requires no Sam Darnold and no rookie quarterback. And this would be, you sign a free agent quarterback in either Dak Prescott, like you go crazy and you give him the bag, because again, they have the money, so they can spend it if they want to. You either go after Dak, or you find a way to trade for Stafford, who has a potential out in his contract after this season. But even if he doesn't, he has 2 years of control left. And obviously he's getting a little older, but his average annual salary for those 2 years is around like $22 million. So at least now, and basically what free agency is for, is you're paying for guys that you already know what you're going to get for them. And that's what I mean with Darnold, and you're going to have to pay him. And I feel like even in a year, 2 years, you're still not going to know what Sam Darnold you have. You know what Matt Stafford and you know what Dak Prescott brings to the table. So to me, I think their best avenue is to use that number 2 overall pick to either trade back and accumulate more guys, more draft picks, or you get Penei Sewell or Micah Parsons. You either have that foundational piece on the defense with Parsons, or you have that guy to mirror Becton, your other first round pick from this past draft, in Sewell, and you put him on the right side, and then now you're closer to that wall of China in there in East Rutherford, and then you have a quarterback who you know where you're going to get. I think both of them are a shit ton better than Sam Darnold, and I think they're a shit ton better than Darnold will ever be. And when I say better, obviously statistically, but I think they're better in the way that we just talked about before, where they have the ability to make the people around them better than Darnold would have the ability to. So I think that route, to me, would be a lot better for them. And then obviously you're going to get pretty aggressive in free agency as well, because you're going to win now. Your life cycle right now is these 2 to 3 years or whatever you sign Dak to, which again, I wouldn't imagine with Dak especially being more than maybe like a 6-year deal. But I think even Stafford would be a little bit better in going for a super aggressive 2 to 3 year deal. And again, you're basically telling the fans, hey, we're going to win right now. There's no buffer period, and we're going to try. And if it doesn't work out, shit happens, but at least we tried. Like with Darnold, to me, it seems like they're not really doing anything to try. And that's why with getting Fields, you're at least trying something different. You're not just doing the same thing and rolling out the same product year in and year out. So that, to me, would be smart. And then also a head coaching candidate in Jim Caldwell, who coached Matt Stafford and they had success. That, to me, I think could be a perfect combination there in New York.
I think the problem with that is that free agency is a two-way street. Like, the guy has to agree to play for the Jets. And when have we seen a huge free agent sign with the Jets, right? Brett Favre was a trade. They signed Revis back, but he was there before. He grew up in New York. Who's like the major guy to go to the Jets? Like, Peyton Manning said no to the Jets when he was leaving Indianapolis. So
yeah, I mean,
I don't know how realistic it is for Dak Prescott to sign a free agent contract with the New York Jets. And all these free agent quarterbacks, they're going to want to go to the team, because it's not like how it was 50 years ago where these players need New York City, right? These teams, these guys can make brands wherever. They can, like Patrick Mahomes plays in fucking Kansas City, right? And he's the biggest star in sports, probably behind LeBron James. And he's the biggest guy in Kansas City, Missouri. Like, they don't need New York anymore. So they're going to go or sign with teams that have established head coaches, established offensive line, weapons on the outside, a solid running back, and a championship defense. And the Jets have none of that. So the hard thing would be I think that's I think, in theory, in a perfect world, that's the best option, but I think it's the most difficult option, because you got to convince one of these major players to be a Jet. And what's the attractiveness of being a New York Jet right now? There really isn't. And free agency happens before the draft. Yeah. So you have to they would have to come in trusting Joe Douglas to draft the right guys. So I don't know. That's a tough ask for a Dak Prescott when he can just go back to Dallas or go wherever, and honestly, anywhere, whatever other better organization there is. And I can make the argument that all 31 other organizations are better, to be honest with you.
And that's why, to your point, and that we both agreed upon, I think the hiring of the head coach is going to be even more important than whoever they have as their starting quarterback next year. Yeah. Because so much is going to stem off of that. And that's what I mean. Say you get a guy like Jim Caldwell, or you get a guy like Eric Bieniemy from the Chiefs, who's obviously a very well sought after head coach. Yeah. Then maybe you're going to be able to convince a guy like, say, Stafford, or even like a Matt Ryan, if you wanted to as well, to come play for you, let alone a Dak Prescott. So that to me, I think would make the most sense for them right now. And that doesn't mean that you don't draft a rookie quarterback. It just probably means you're not going to draft him in the first round. I think rounds 2 to 7 are free reign to try to find a guy. And if you love the guy, then
another little caveat to your plan is that you spend $40 million on a quarterback. That's a big chunk of the cap space that you don't have anymore to build around the quarterback that you just signed. So if you get a cheap quarterback, like you keep Darnold, or you draft Fields or whoever, you still have that $100 million in space that you can use to build around them.
Well, that's why that sitting in the middle of Darnold being that cheaper labor, but you're still don't really know what you're getting.
Mm-hmm.
You know what you're getting with Dak, and I think personally it's a really great player. I'm
And
not
if you
so in
sign
love.
if you sign Dak, he's not going to want rookie receivers. He's going to want you to bring
Oh
in
yeah,
an Allen Robinson. So that's another
yeah,
20 million. So now all of a sudden, of the $100 million you had, you spent 60 of it on two guys. I
yeah,
don't
and
that might not be the wisest thing unless you're trying to win in a 2 or 3 year window.
and the reason. Well, yes, agree that. So that reason one, yeah, you have to have in a 2-year window. That's basically what you're going for. The reason they could do it is because they have so many draft picks in the next couple of years, and they have 4 first rounders in the next 2 years. So they have a little bit of leeway in that's going to be their cheap labor for the next 4 to 5 years, and you're obviously banking on them producing right away, which isn't unheard of nowadays in the NFL. It's not like baseball where these guys wait 10 years before they kind of can contribute. But that's why when you kind of say it out loud, I'm not as in love with the Dak move, but I am in love a little bit more with the Stafford move because I think he's 100% undoubtedly a step up from Darnold.
Mm-hmm.
And again, obviously it's going to cost you a little more than it would, but I think that just it makes a little more sense because if you go with Darnold, you're basically you're almost basically writing his second contract in a sense.
Yeah.
And again, and if he sucks horribly in the next year or two, then you're going to have to restart anyway. So it's basically like if you want to restart, you're going to restart right now this year when you have the second overall pick. And if you are going with Darnold, you're basically going to give him a second contract anyway, in a sense. That's the kind of how I look at it.
Yeah, but you could also not. Let's say you use the second overall pick and you get an edge guy, right? And you get a receiver with the later first round pick, and you build the offensive line through free agency, and you build a secondary through free agency, and Darnold bombs next year, and they lose and they go 6-10 because even though Darnold's a bust, their roster pushes them up to 6 wins. You could still get a quarterback that next year and then have a ready-made roster that's much better built than the one that is currently. So maybe having Darnold, even if it's only a 6-win season, even if the roster's better, there's still options at quarterback because there's always going to be quarterbacks available.
Yeah.
Every single year. So it's not like this is the only year for the rest of history that quarterback's going to be available. Yeah.
But
so do you roll the dice? Do you think it would be better? The Jets are going to have to decide if it's better to upgrade the roster as best they can around Darnold and just see what happens and then reassess next offseason, or are they in love with Justin Fields where they get to a point where they're like, we will regret forever that we don't take Justin Fields. I'm just not sure Justin Fields is that kind of guy yet.
So, and that's fair. So kind of going into what you're saying, you basically said, build the team. I mean, outside of the quarterback, you have to build a competent team anyway. And that's step one in any successful team organization. You have to have a good team, but that's just a fact. So we agree they both need to do that. And you were saying that roll with Darnold, and then if he bombs, then get a quarterback who's already into a basically ready-made system team.
Yeah.
So to that, wouldn't it then make sense to keep Darnold and draft a quarterback, whether it be Fields with number 2 or say trade back from 2 to a later pick in the first round and then get a quarterback? So basically get any other quarterback in the first round and then have both guys. I know we talk a lot about competition. And again, you saw it with Herbert and Tyrod Taylor. You saw it with Fitz and you saw it with Tua. And you saw it obviously with Wentz and you saw it with Hurts. So I think that situation for a little bit of an option 4 could make the most sense because I know a lot of people, if you get a rookie, you obviously want to play him right away. And I think to some extent, I agree. And in the grand scheme of things, I mean, or right off the bat, people are going to be like, oh, well, that's a waste of a pick. Then you could have used it on someone else.
Yeah.
Well, like I said before, you have 4 first-round picks. It's not like you only have 1 first-round pick, so it's not going to impact you as much. Obviously, there's a possibility that you can miss out on a transcendent player, but that's every single year, and that's every single draft pick, basically, because there's always some diamond in the rough. So to me, just kind of listening to what you're saying and even just kind of hearing myself speak too, why not do both? Like again, why can't you? I mean, the Eagles did it, and thank God they did.
I think the problem with that is that I think the second overall pick is such a valuable spot to be in. I think it would be better suited if we kind of adjust this plan right now. Let's say they keep Darnold and they use the second pick on a receiver or an edge rusher or whatever they need. They need a lot. So whatever they decide on. What if, because they have another first round pick and then they have 2 seconds. So what if the kid from Florida falls down and they have him at 2?
Trask, yeah.
Like, would it be better suited to keep Darnold, plug in a hole that they have on the roster with the 2 pick, and then get the quarterback in a later round? Or the kid from Florida falls to them at 2, and they take him instead. That might be the way to go.
So my final answer for your initial question, which we may have forgot, is what do you do? I think you trade down from that second overall pick, and with that, you're probably going to get at least 2 first rounders and then probably a third or maybe even a second. Because I know the trade that Washington made to get RG3 was 3 first rounders. So you figure a team is going to, a QB needy team is going to do that. So you're basically accumulating a 3-to-1 kind of trade here. And then I think you use one of those first round picks. Let's assume they end up with 2 or 3. And obviously it's a little later. So I'm going to say you're going to use one of those first round picks probably on a lineman. I think you're going to go after a lineman in free agency as well. Probably a pretty big name guy. So now 3 out of your 5 guys are, one's Becton, one's a first round talent who you're assuming is going to be good. And then one's a free agent that you just paid money on who, again, you're also assuming is going to be good and going to be the answer there. So now you have 3 out of the 5 positions on the line that are set up already. Then I'm going to use one of those 3 first rounders that you have in that year on a quarterback. So now you're alleviating the risk a little bit because, hey, he's one of 3 picks instead of just one of 1 pick. So, and then obviously you're probably going to get another second rounder or maybe even another first rounder next year. So you have more ammo in the tank. And I think anytime you can have kind of more picks at your expense, you roll with that. Yeah. So I think so maybe not take Fields, but trade back. You get what, again, like you said, they need a lot of positions. They have needs all over the place. So you basically just draft best player available because you have needs all over the place besides defensive tackle because Quentin Williams is an animal and Marcus May as a safety. So you basically draft anybody else, help yourself out in the draft by going after specific free agents and just not drafting those positions. And I think that is their best bet to give Darnold the chance with weapons and with a built team, but having that insurance plan with a ready rookie QB who can also work under Sam Darnold and then work with the new head coach. So this way, if Darnold isn't the guy, then you could kind of boot him out and you could insert the other guy mid-season like you're seeing with Jalen Hurts. So I think hopefully they learn from their neighbors to the north in Philadelphia and kind of go down that route.
Yeah, Philadelphia South, though.
Philadelphia South. I'm an idiot. I failed geography.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of options for the Jets. I think it's an exciting time for the Jets, even though they're 1-13 and things don't look exciting. But it is exciting because, as we said before, Trevor Lawrence isn't the only avenue to become a successful franchise.
Agreed. Yeah.
Because how many times have we seen teams that didn't have the first overall pick, like Jameis Winston didn't work out for the Bucs, right? There's so many times where the first overall pick doesn't necessarily dictate success in the future. So even though we love Trevor Lawrence and even though the Jets, their best option is probably lose out and hope that the Jaguars beat the Bears this week, I think that, there's other ways for the Jets to win. Yeah. And we spent an entire hour on the Jets and I can't believe we did it, but we did.
I figured we would.
So, round of applause to us for doing that for you guys because who actually
you Jet fans better listen to this
entire hour. We'll quickly go through our teams. Dolphins won, Giants lost. Start with the Giants because their season's basically over, so we can just do a little Giants funeral at this point. Things were looking good. They beat the Bengals, and then Jones, took a dive and hurt himself. And then he didn't play in Seattle. Then they won. And then he hurt himself again. They looked bad against Arizona, looked terrible against Cleveland. Fact of the matter was Cleveland has so many better football players than the Giants do. That's just the way it was. Baker was, fantastic. Let's just call it as it is. Giants, it was a good little run to get into first place, but I think we've gone back to reality, and you just hope for that. I don't think they're going to beat the Ravens. The Ravens seem to have figured it out. And then that Dallas game, who knows at that point. So I think most important thing is to get into that top 10 in the draft. My problem with the Giants now is that I think their defense is good. I still think they need that edge pass rusher to really ensure that defense could be elite. Offensively, I think that Jason Garrett did a good enough job to get a second year as the play caller. And I think Joe Judge did a good enough job as the head coach. My problem is with the offense mostly is that offensive line still needs work. I'm not sold on the quarterback or his health, which is a big problem. And their receivers don't get separation. I saw a tweet yesterday that the Giants have spent in the last 3 drafts, the 2nd overall pick, the 6th overall pick, and then 13th and 16th overall picks. I think it was in that range. So 4 first-round picks in the last 3 years, and they have the 31st ranked offense. That's not good in terms of how they develop players. So I don't know. I think Gettleman saved his job because they won a few games in the middle of the year, but I don't know.
Yeah, I was going to say
Giants season is over, and I'm optimistic about their future, but I'm not sold on the quarterback, and I think that's a problem.
Yeah, I mean, I was I was getting lunch with Eddie today, and we were kind of talking about the Giants a little bit, and that's what it's funny. And again, I don't mean to laugh at it, but you're obviously a very realistic Giants fan. But 2 weeks ago, the Twitter sphere was going crazy.
Yeah, it was Super Bowl again.
We were flexing the Giants to prime time. The hype was real, and it was probably the most hype I've ever seen around a 5-win team.
And the thing about that, the thing about that was that it was still after a Colt McCoy win and not a Daniel Jones win.
So that is somewhat telling as to where the franchise and even I think where the fan base is as of right now. And I think the Giants are in a very weird position because as much as it seems like Joe Judge did a good job, and I think he still did, statistically speaking, he easily could have rode into the sunset into the playoffs with a 7-win team. I mean, with a 7-win season. And they still didn't get that. Now, that's not all on him because, like you said, this team has a lot of pieces they're kind of missing. Not too many, but they have a good amount. And unfortunately, some of those pieces that they're missing aren't on the roster. So that's going to mean they're probably going to need to go after a big-name free agent, maybe like an Allen Robinson or a Kenny Galladay at wide receiver.
Yeah.
And you honestly might even need to get a wide receiver in free agency and then maybe in the draft too in the first 2 rounds. So it's going to be a year for them to invest and not just address in their issues if they want to have success. And I think that Joe Judge did a good job. I don't think he did a great job.
Yeah, I don't think he's coach of the year. A lot of people were giving him coach of the year after the Seattle win. I don't think that's the case. I think that the pieces are there for them to take a step up next year. I think they have to. I think Daniel Jones's job's on the line because it would be year 3.
Yeah.
They definitely need a receiver in free agency. They definitely need another edge guy. I like their linebacking core led by Martinez.
Same. I think it's awesome.
I like their secondary led by Bradbury and McKinney coming back, and we'll see what happens with Love. I like their secondary where it's at. They could always use
stud too.
Peppers. They can always use more. I think most importantly, I think the sense of urgency in terms of who to acquire in the offseason would be offensive line because it still struggles and a number 1 receiver. I think that's the final test for Daniel Jones to see if he's going to be the guy long term is how he would connect with a top wide receiver 1 kind of guy.
Yeah, I think, and you used a good point, urgency. I think the Giants are going to have to be a little more urgent than they would like to because you're seeing that their defense is playoff, if not Super Bowl ready. I mean, it's hard to argue that. Like you said, they're only missing maybe 1 or 2 pieces on defense, which is awesome. I mean, anytime you could basically rebuild your defense in 1 free agency and 1 draft class is a tip of the cap to Gettleman. But now, similar to the Dolphins, is you need to figure it out on the offensive side of the ball. And again, it obviously starts with the quarterback, but that decision's already kind of being made. You already know Daniel Jones is going to be your quarterback next year, no question about it. That's fine. But what are we going to do to give him some weapons so now we can really evaluate him? Because to some extent, you cannot evaluate really a quarterback when they have complete shit around them. Now, what we perceive as shit, it varies from team to team. Now, I do not think that the Giants have a shit receiving core by any means. Their offensive line.
No, I like the receiving core. I like Slayton. I like Shepard. They're good complementary guys. Those guys work when you have Odell Beckham Jr., right?
Can't say his name. Can't say his
right?
name.
But no, but like if you have an Odell Beckham Jr. type guy, the Slaytons and the Shepards, that's a great receiving core. But without that alpha, then it's just, it's a couple. They're nice receivers, but they're not going to save you.
You're speaking my language right now. I mean, this just goes to the name of game of what football is more than any other sport. It's getting guys to do what they do best. Sterling Shepard is not your number one wide receiver. Neither is Darius Slayton, but that is okay. Jarvis Landry makes $14 million being the best slot receiver possibly in the game. And usually the slot receiver is your number 2, number 3 guy on the depth chart.
I mean, the Giants, one of the most liked receivers in their franchise history is Victor Cruz. He was the number 3. They had Nix, who was a monster on the outside, and they had Manningham, who made one of the greatest catches in Super Bowl history. You definitely need those like strong, physical, or in terms of like a Nix or the speedster like a Tyreek Hill or a Odell Beckham. You definitely need one of those two.
I think there's a good balance of that in the draft. I think they're pretty wide receiver heavy. I mean, and with where the Giants are going to be picking, you're going to assume sub 15. They're going to have a chance at Jamar Chase, Jalen Waddle, or Devontae Smith. So they're going to have their pick. If they want to go down that route, there is no excuse for them to not get that first round wide receiver if they want. And then obviously they have a good amount of cap space as well. We're going to see how much they have left after you assume they're going to give Leonard Williams an extension, rightfully deserved. And you'll see what they do with Logan Ryan. I don't know if you're going to see that extension as much. I guess we'll see if he wants to take a little bit of discount. But there's really no excuse for them to not sign a wide receiver as well. And maybe it's not the big name Allen Robinson guy, but sign somebody. Just anybody that's going to be an upgrade from what they have right now.
Yeah, I mean, we're not asking for a receiver because we want Shepard and Slayton off the team. We just want someone to complement it and just kind of wrap together.
Complementary football is the name of the game. The name of the game.
We'll finish it out with your Dolphins. Big win against the Patriots.
Mm-hmm.
Was it 22-12 or something like that?
Yeah, 22-12.
Newton's done. This is Newton's last year in the NFL. Like, he's terrible. But I digress. The Dolphins, where are we looking in terms of playoffs? Do they control their own destiny?
So I'll first touch about. I want to honestly finish with Cam Newton, but I'll go quick through the Dolphins. I'll go quick through the Dolphins. So 122-12, defense showed out as usual. They rushed for 250 yards, and to do that against the Bill Belichick led defense was honestly astonishing. I mean, I can't remember the last time the Dolphins ever had 250 rushing yards. This was the first time. Savon Ahmed, he rushed for like 125 yards and had 1 touchdown. We haven't had a rusher rush for over 100 yards in 2 seasons. That's just how bad we've been. We were the league worst in yards per attempt in 3.6. Obviously, that probably changed now. So we did what we needed to do. We showed out. Again, Tua's stat line didn't jump off the page, but you know what he did? When you're up 15-12, he led a 90-yard game-winning touchdown drive to basically ice the game. So that's what I see, and that's what people don't see when you just look at a stat book. Playoff-wise, if they win against the Raiders and if they beat the Bills, they're in. So they control their own destiny. Unfortunately, the Bills game is going to be a hard one to beat just because the Bills are very good and the Bills are going to be playing at home. Who knows if Cuomo decides to baptize that stadium with New Era Stadium for the first time and it's against the Dolphins, and that would just be crazy. But, I mean, you have a good, hard game against the Raiders. Again, I think they should handle their business. But they need the Ravens to lose. But unfortunately, if they lose to the Giants, it doesn't do anything because the tiebreaker for the wild card is conference wins or conference record. So that doesn't do anything. So you would need the Ravens to lose to the Bengals in week 17 if the Dolphins lose as well in either week 16 or week 17. If they lose 2, I'm pretty sure they're done altogether. And I guess unless the Ravens lose back to back, but I doubt that's going to happen. I think they play someone, or they play the Giants and then they play the Bengals. So two
Don't sleep on
easy.
Cincinnati. They might help you out. They
That
showed up
would be
yesterday.
so they control their own destiny. We'll see what happens there. But I wanted to finish off with Cam Newton.
Go ahead.
I think he's done. I mean, just watching him, like the offense is so vanilla when he's in. His arm is not there. I saw so many balls that were just 10 yards in the dirt, 10 yards over someone's head. I mean, the amount of like actual dimes he's dropped this year has probably been like 5.
Mhm.
I mean, just watching the 2 Dolphins games, yes, he can run the ball, but once you take that away, there's nothing. And it's not like Lamar who could still light it up a little bit with his arm. Cam Newton just has nothing left, and he's a shell of himself. And I think it would behoove the Patriots to stick around with him again. I think they're probably dying, and Belichick's probably dying to restart his offense. And I think same with Josh McDaniels. It was fun while it lasted. He had a nice little option kind of quarterback. He tried it out, but it ain't working.
Yeah, I think just to put it simply, if Belichick can't fix you, I think it's over.
Yeah, no, I agree.
It's sad because he had that one amazing year in 2015, 15-1, went to the Super Bowl, lost to the Broncos, and then ever since then he's been struggling to get back to that level, and it just never happened. And it just sometimes you just chalk it up to life in the NFL. Like, these guys don't last long. Like, only like the 1% are the Bradys and Mannings and Rodgers and Montanas and Favres. Only a fraction of them last 10 years plus. And Cam's just not one of those guys. It sucks because he was such an electrifying talent when he first came in, and that one year where he won the MVP. But it's clear watching him that he just doesn't have it anymore. As you said, his arm strength was never good to begin with, I don't think. But now it's just completely shot.
Yeah, so, I mean, he's post shoulder surgeries, and it's very similar to Markelle Fultz, where he just doesn't look the same.
Now you just got to ask the question: do the Patriots, do they run with Stidham at some point at the end of this year, just to see what they have in terms of to give him a shot next year, or you have to start thinking about what kind of guy are the Patriots going to get? Are they going to dip into the free agent pool? Are they going to trade, or are they going to possibly draft where they are at quarterback, like the kid from Florida or wherever, or do they possibly trade up?
I mean, I think for this season, I think it would make the most sense to go with Stidham. I mean, you already gave Cam a 14, 15 game sample size. I think that was enough to get a gauge on if they want to bring him back next year. So I think you go with Stidham for 2. As far as what they do in free agency in the offseason, I think we could tackle that in a future episode, because there's a lot to dive into there.
Okay, last thing for you, Matt. It's the Christmas episode. Christmas is on Friday. One Christmas gift that the Dolphins can give you is what?
It's just give me a playoff berth by December 27th. I mean, the Dolphins play on Saturday, 8:15. If they win, and then I think maybe it's not possible, but I don't know. Just somehow, if there is a way to get us into the playoffs, give me that. That would make my life.
All right, a Dolphins playoff game, a Tua playoff game. I think that's what we all want.
That's what's on my Christmas list. What about you?
If the Giants can give me a present, it would obviously be a top 10 pick, because I've come back to reality. I'm giving up the hope that they'll make the playoffs, because I don't think they will. It'd have to be like the Washington would have to lose to the Panthers. I don't see that happening. And then the Giants would have to win out against a Ravens team, and then the Cowboys, and then, the Eagles are still in it, and the Cowboys are still in it. It's too much. It's too much for me. So just give me the top 10 pick, put me out of my misery this year, and I'll be fine. So I think that's it. All right. That's it. Matt, have a very Merry Christmas.
Same to you. Same to everybody watching and listening. And thank you for the support so far this year. And I think, is this the last episode before the new year as well? Or are we going to tackle another one? I'm trying to think.
I can look at my calendar. Let's
look it up real quick. We've got to know.
Look it up real quick. Why not? We have the time. A week from today would be the 29th. So we can do a playoff preview. We'll do a playoff preview.
Yeah. Well, it won't be a Happy New Year's episode yet.
Oh wait, no. The 29th would be leading into week 17. So we'll do.
Oh no, we got time. We got time. I'm an idiot.
Our wild card preview episode would be January 5th or something like that.
We got plenty of time.
So we got one more episode before the new year.
So it's a nice Merry
but
Christmas
then-
episode for everybody.
Until then, everybody have a Merry Christmas. And I hope all of your football teams wins, even though that's impossible. So not every team can win every game and every week.
Unfortunately not.
All right. For Matt Ferrara, my name is Glen and Matt. Have a happy holiday, and we'll see you next week.